News then coming into us in the last half hour or so that Israel has formally identified the latest body handed over by Hamas. This was last night as Tanzanian national Joshua Mollel. It means that there should now be 6 remaining deceased hostages in Gaza. Comes as well as the UN is warning that aid agencies are in a race against time to get food and other supplies into Gaza. Well, let's try once again to cross to our correspondent Noga Tarnopolsky in Jerusalem. Bring us up to date, Noga. I know you started to try to before, but try to give us the full details of what's happened here.
Yes, I'm sorry about that, Stuart. Let's try again. Joshua Mollel was a very special case among the 251 hostages taken by Hamas on October 7th, 2023. A very young kid, a scholarship student from Tanzania, from Dar es Salaam. He had come to Israel to study agronomy. He had arrived less than 2 weeks before the attack, and he was murdered, it appears, on the very morning of October 7th, and his body was dragged in with so many others to Gaza. His story is particularly touching because his studies were supposed to commence on October 9th. He obviously didn't make it. And for his parents, the tragedy has been somewhat unfathomable. They were horrified when videos of his remains appeared in some of these kind of psychological terror videos that appeared online. They refused to accept that he was dead until they received his body. We know that now the authorities are in touch with them, and the Tanzanian embassy will be taking charge of Joshua Mollel's remains, but his face has become very familiar here, and as his case. So there's quite a bit of reaction here in Israel, despite him being a foreign citizen who few people knew. And this is adding to I would say, the general mournful feeling in Israel with 2 of the funerals of the other dead hostages who've been returned in recent days. One will take place today and another one on Sunday.
Noga, meanwhile, you were actually taken into Gaza yesterday, we should say in what was a very, very highly controlled visit.
That's right. About 20 of us foreign journalists were invited by the Israeli army for what's considered to be embedded with the troops, except it wasn't really that. And I want to give some context. France 24, as part of the Foreign Press Association in Israel and Palestine, has sued the Israeli state to allow us to cover Gaza. And it appears that these efforts to take us in under these very controlled circumstances are part of an effort to show the court that the army is in fact letting us do our work. So while we did see some interesting things, which I'm happy to describe, we are absolutely not being allowed to do our work, and I think it's important to underscore that. We were driven in an unarmored vehicle in a truck covered by a tarp about 5 minutes into Gaza to a base, small base, in the remains of what used to be the Gaza City suburb of Sujaiya, surrounded by wreckage. We were able to see our surroundings mostly by getting up on something like a sand dune around this small base. We were wearing flak jackets and helmets, but the soldiers at the base were wearing T-shirts. We were not in any place that is considered particularly dangerous, and we were very, very far away from any human population. We couldn't see any Palestinians. Obviously, we couldn't interact with them. We were kept so far away, in fact, that we now know, we knew it when we came out of Gaza, that at the same time that we were there, in the same neighborhood of Sujaiya, the Israeli army shot at 2 men it calls terrorists who had crossed the so-called yellow line, this line defined, perimeter defined in the Trump ceasefire to differentiate between the populated parts of Gaza where Hamas, the terror group, is still in charge, to those parts to which the Israeli army withdrew. And at about the same time that this incident took place, we were being shown by the spokesperson of the Israeli army how there is no real yellow line. There is nothing defined. There is, in fact, it's such a panorama of wasteland that no one, including the Israeli army, can really point out to a distinct place where if you cross, you could get shot. And I was left with the distinct impression that it is impossible for any civilian still remaining there or anyone with bad intentions in that area. It is simply impossible to know when you risk life and limb and when you don't. And that may explain maybe at least one of the reasons why more than 250 Gazans have been killed by Israeli fire during this period of the ceasefire. So we were certainly able to get some impressions, but we are really not able to enter Gaza and do our work.